As Maddie introduced, my Korean name is actually Kyungmin Kim. I just go by Min. I was born and raised in South Korea, and I moved to US at 14. And I just came to Australia like 3 months ago. And this is my first time in Melbourne. We just drove up like 9 hours. Thanks, Jess, for driving us all the way. And I'm so excited to stay here for the weekend and just get to know everyone. But my part of the charge is called Stand Up Queen. And it's about the confidence that doesn't hide behind self-preservation, but rises to stand for something greater than ourselves. For most of my life, I confuse confidence with self-preservation. Think about it. What do you rely on to preserve your confidence? For some, it's how we look, the makeup, the clothes, the fitness. For others, it's approval, being liked, admired, and complimented. For some, it's relationships, career titles, education, grades, and financial stability. Maybe it's your talents, singing, speaking, creativity. Maybe it's curating the perfect lifestyle, traveling, the routines and friendships that look good on Instagram. Or maybe it's the business and productivity of your day-to-day life. But here's the problem. Titles get taken away, the looks fade, careers change, and relationships shift. If our confidence is only in what we can preserve, what happens when everything's taken away? We can't be truly confident until we have the confidence to lose all. C.S. Lewis once said, "Don't let your happiness depend on something you may lose." And that's the trap so many of us fall into. We build our confidence in something that can be taken away overnight. That's why the story of Esther struck me so deeply. Mordecai and Esther, two people facing the same crisis, respond in completely different ways. Mordecai was stripped down to sackcloth, was desperate for his people. But Queen Esther was clothed in royal robe, but she was paralyzed by fear for herself. Esther chapter 4 verse 1 reads, "When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly." When Mordecai heard the edict to destroy all the Jews, he humbled himself completely and mourned with all his being, because that's all he could do. But when Queen Esther learned about the same thing, her response back to Mordecai was not so much of a confident queen. It says, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned by the king has but one law, that they be put to death, unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. Even as the queen, wrapped in splendor, Esther was insecure, uncertain if the king still favored her, after 30 days of silence. And I can relate to that. Sorry, my mouth is pretty dry. I wasn't an orphan like Esther. I actually had a really happy childhood, raised by my dad and my grandparents. But at 14, my world fell apart. My dad married a woman he met a few months ago, and my family was against this marriage. And my family was torn in two. My grandparents and my aunts opposed the marriage, and conflicts escalated even to suing each other legally. And suddenly, the family that once felt so safe turned against each other. And I was caught up in the middle, expected to choose sides, hearing different sides of the stories. I felt confused, unprotected, and orphaned. When I left Korea to study in the US a year later, after all this happened, I thought I could escape it all. My royal robe became my achievements. Getting into a good university in California, being ahead of others in my graduation track, and chasing after every opportunity. And the truth is, I was only able to do this because of my dad and my stepmom's financial support. On the outside, I looked like I had everything set up for success. But inside, I was wrestling daily with insecurity, asking myself, am I really good enough? Am I wasting all the opportunities and investments poured in me? And the pressure didn't stop. Every time I called my stepmom, she reminded me, the only reason you have these opportunities is because of us. If you stayed in Korea, you'd barely make it into an average school and struggle to even find a job. Those words only made me feel the weight heavier. Instead of being excited about the opportunities to serve and contribute to the world, I became consumed with just protecting my own security and comfort. So I want to ask, where are you wearing your royal robe, appearing strong and accomplished on the outside, but silently battling with insecurity inside? Is it family approval, picture perfect life, or a great education or career? Like Esther and like me, are you so caught up in yourself that you're overlooking the greater needs outside? And then we continue. In Esther 4, verse 13 to 14, Isa already read this, but Mordecai replies to Esther, "Do not think that because you're in the king's house, you alone of the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." I love Mordecai's stern correction. His response shows his confidence in God, no matter what Esther decides to do. Yet he reminds her the consequence of her own action will be there. He doesn't flatter her by saying, "Surely the king loves you, you're beautiful, and you're chosen." But he asks her, "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" And that was enough. Esther responds with her queenly resolve to gather the Jews to fast for 3 days. And she says, "And if I perish, I perish." Just one person and one question can strip away all our confidence, all our false confidence. For me, it was Jesus' question in Luke chapter 9, 24 to 25. He says, "For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self?" Those words haunted me because at that time I was chasing the world, building my resume, living that DACA routine, keeping busy with my friends and boyfriend, and even going to church looking spiritual. But inside I was exhausted and empty. The more I tried to preserve myself, the more I felt like I was losing myself. I was just a busybody. And I remember this quote Martin Luther King Jr. said. He said, "A man who won't die for something is not fit to live." It's pretty intense. But I was really looking for something to lose my life for. I didn't know back then. But when Esther chose to risk losing her life for her people, she finally discovered her true identity as the queen that God called her to be. So I want to ask you another question. Do you have someone in your life, like Mordecai to Esther, that can challenge you to face the reality rather than comfort you at the moment? Do you have something worth losing your life for? And we continue. What's amazing is what God responds once Esther made that decision. On the last day of her fast, Esther went to the king and he extends the gold scepter to spare her. She hosted 2 banquets inviting both the king and Haman. Many reasons have been suggested why she had to hold 2 banquets, but the explanation that resonates with me is this. Esther was waiting for God's sign, and he gave it. Between the first and the second banquet, after the 3 days of fasting, God turned the tables. In Esther chapter 6, verse 10 to 12, Haman was forced to honor his enemy Mordecai. It says, "Go at once," the king commanded Haman. "Get the robe and the horse and do just as what you suggested for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended." So Haman got the robe and the horse. He robed Mordecai and led him on a horseback through the city streets, proclaiming before him, "This is what is done for the men the king delights to honor." God was the one who took off Mordecai's sackcloth and put on him a royal robe. Mordecai's confidence in God, even when everything was stripped down, was vindicated as true confidence. Esther saw that, and she had the courage to go to the second banquet and plead with the king. Esther had been afraid to approach her own husband's throne because she doubted their intimacy. But through the process, she learned that she could approach something even higher, which was God's throne. In Hebrews chapter 4:16, it says, "Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." If we can approach God's throne with confidence, we can approach any throne with confidence. God crowns our confidence with what we feared to approach, just as he took Mordecai from sackcloth to royal robe, honored above the very enemy that was trying to destroy him. For me, I was really afraid to go after great opportunities after graduating from uni because I was insecure. So I settled with my first job offer. But within a year, I quickly grew bored and stuck at the job. And I spent all my free time job hunting, and the only offer I received was taken back. That's when I realized I needed to stop striving on my own and start approaching God's throne. So I prayed, specifically for an opportunity that only God can give. That prayer was my way of stepping before God's throne, admitting I didn't have the strength or resume or connections to make it happen on my own. And God honored it. Within months of praying, a head recruiter reached out to me. Honestly, thank you. Thank you. A head recruiter reached out to me out of nowhere, and she offered me the senior IT analyst position at a pharmaceutical company, which was like 15 minutes away from my house. And after just a couple interviews, I was offered the job. At the time when even PhD graduates with years of experience were, struggling to find a job. God opened the door for me that I could have never opened for myself. So what are you afraid of approaching? Do you know that you can approach the highest of thrones? And not only Mordecai, God clothed all the Jews with joy and honor because of Esther. In Esther chapter 8, it says, when Mordecai left the king's presence, he was wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold, and a purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. For the Jews, it was time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province and in every city to which the edict of the king was sent, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebrating. And many people of other nationalities became Jews because fear of Jews has seized them. A little history, as Isa explained, Jews had been conquered by the foreign country, Babylon, and their temple was destroyed. And for years, they lived as exiles. When Cyrus the Great, the king, rose to power, he allowed the Jews to return and rebuild their temple. Some went back, but most chose to stay back, where the comfort is. By the time of Esther, the temple was rebuilt, but the walls of Jerusalem were still in ruins. God's people were still scattered and vulnerable. Unlike Cyrus, Esther's husband, King Xerxes, was not known for compassion or tolerance towards conquered peoples. Life was uncertain and dangerous for the Jews under his rule. That's why Esther's courage mattered so much. By standing up for her people, she didn't just save them from genocide. She inspired the Jewish community in exile to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild their city. Nehemiah, the leader who was sent back to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls, actually served Xerxes' son, Artaxerxes, and may have even known of Esther personally. Her stand could have very well inspired Nehemiah to take his own. Esther's courage didn't just save her generation, it created ripples that helped rebuild the entire nation. Even without faith in God, we see that one person can have such great impact in the world. That's why we love heroes and role models. As an engineering student, my role model used to be Elon Musk. One man, yet he's sending spaceships to Mars, making electric cars mainstream, working on brain-computer connections, and digging super fast tunnels, and developing AI that drives our cars. His impact is undeniable. But then I came to know Jesus, and I realized that the impact of one person can go beyond technology, history, and life itself. Romans chapter 5, verse 19, it says, for just as through the disobedience of one man, the many were made sinners, so also through the obedience of the one man, the many will be made righteous. Here's what it means. Adam, the first man, represented all humanity. His disobedience opened the door to sin, and like pollution at the source of the river, it flowed downstream to every person after him. And that's why we all struggle with sin and death. But Jesus came as the new Adam. Where Adam failed, Jesus obeyed. Through his obedience, his death, and his resurrection, he opened the door not to sin, but to life and righteousness. Just as one man's failure dragged us all down, one man's faithfulness raised us all up. And that's when I realized this was what I have been searching for. This was what I was willing to lose my life for. I didn't always believe in God, much less in Jesus. The whole idea of sin and salvation never made sense to me because I thought I was a good person and I didn't need any saving. That changed when I began to wrestle with the real consequences of sin, overwhelming depression and anxiety that I couldn't overcome on my own. Just as in searching for my answers, I began to study the Bible. God also placed people in my life that could help me with that. For the first time, I realized how my sins were dragging me towards death. The hatred and unforgiveness I carried towards others. I was even thinking of cutting off my own dad and my stepmom after having them pay for my tuition. The selfishness that left me isolated despite looking like I had an active social life. I came to understand that the only reason I could have life was because of ripple effect of Jesus laying down his life. Just as Esther and Jesus shows us that one surrendered life can save so many, God is still working through people today. And that's why my confidence can't be in self-preservation anymore. It has to be in what God can do through me. I'm not smarter or more capable than Elon Musk, by no means. But I believe that God can use my life to do far greater things than just launching rockets, launching lives into Christ. But here's the truth. Putting confidence in God is actually so much scarier than putting confidence in myself. Self-preservation kept me really comfortable. Back in LA, I had a stable, hybrid 9-to-5 job and had a safe routine of just studying the Bible with a couple people throughout the week and just feeling great about myself. But confidence in God meant stepping into the unknown. It meant leaving LA and my promising IT career just as its beginning, to come to Sydney and be trained as a full-time minister, even disappointing my own parents and setting aside their investments in me, so that one day I can return to my country and start a church. This thought terrifies me because I know I don't have the wisdom or talent to do so. Yet that's the point. God doesn't call me to build a comfortable life. He calls me to lay my life down, just as Jesus laid his down for me. And that's where the true confidence comes. I want to leave you with this. Jesus says in John chapter 12, verse 24, he says, "Very truly I tell you, unless the kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, there remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." That's the difference between self-preservation and true confidence. Self-preservation clings to the robe, to the throne, and the image of control. But true confidence is the willingness to lay it all down, trusting that life, or even greater than life, will come out of it. Esther found that confidence when she says, "If I perish, I perish." And Jesus embodied it when he laid his life down for so many. And I'm learning to walk in it too, leaving behind my comfortable life and finding confidence not in what I can protect and build up, but what I can surrender. So here's my challenge. Stand up as queen, not afraid to lose her robe. It's not the robe you wear that changes the world, but the life that you're willing to lay down. And I want to leave you with the same challenge that Isa left us with, to study the Bible with someone that invited you, and you will find something way more worthy than what you're holding on to right now. So thank you for letting me share.